Hi Tigers, today we're going to be making some bread because I've run out of bread and I thought you might have done too. So in order to make this bread you're going to need a few things. So you're going to need some strong bread flour, about 500 grams, maybe a bit more. You're going to need 2 teaspoons of salt. You're going to need 7 grams of yeast, if you can find some. And you're going to need a tablespoon of olive oil and about 300 millilitres of water. Equipment wise, you're going to need a weighing scales, doesn't need to be an electronic one obviously, some grease-proof paper, a tray, an oven, a mixing bowl, a wooden spoon for stirring, a tablespoon measure and a teaspoon measure. If you don't have a tablespoon measure, it's just 4 teaspoons. Right, before you get started, what you need to do is make sure you've washed your hands. You should all be pretty good at that by now, and you need to make sure that your work surface is clean. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, first thing you're going to do is mix up your 500 grams of strong bread flour with your 2 teaspoons of salt. Do not put 2 tablespoons in, and 1 lot of 7 grams of yeast. So I'm going to pour my flour in. It's a little bit over, a little bit under, you don't need to worry about it. I've got my 500 grams of flour. I'm going to get my 2 teaspoons of salt. And then I'm going to measure out my yeast and I'm going to mix it all together. So I'll let you do that and then I'll get back to you. So you might be wondering why you're using some of your ingredients. I'm just going to explain a couple of them. You're using yeast, which is a fungus, because it's going to allow your ingredients to ferment. So when you're mixing that yeast in with the water, it's going to allow your bread to rise. And that is because as it ferments, it's producing carbon dioxide and alcohol, and that carbon dioxide is filling your bread with gas and then allowing it to expand. One of the other ingredients you're using is salt, and the reason for using salt is not only because it produces some fantastic flavours, because it slows down that fermentation process. Because if you don't put the salt in, the carbon dioxide that it's producing is going to produce it really quickly, and you end up with a nice big bread, but it's going to be filled with loads of big air bubbles. Right, so I've mixed all of those together. Once you've got your flour, your yeast and your salt, all you want to do is make a well in the middle. And you're going to start by putting your 3 tablespoons of olive oil in there, and then you're going to start slowly mixing your water in, giving it a stir, and then I'll show you what you need to do when it starts getting a bit sticky. So I'm just going to put my olive oil in now, so that's 3 tablespoons of olive oil straight into that well that we've just made. And then you're going to want around 300 millilitres of water. You might need a little bit more depending on if you've used a little bit too much flour. Just going to measure that now. And then we're going to start slowly pouring it in and start mixing it around. You're going to start to see that doughy texture that you're expecting to see. So I'm going to start mixing that around. I'll get to the sticky stage and I'll show you what the next stage is. So I've mixed in all of my olive oil and my water, and as you can see, it's quite sticky now, and this is where it starts to get a little bit messy. So what you're going to have to do is to put a light dusting of flour on your work surface, which you have cleaned thoroughly, and I'm sure you've cleaned your hands thoroughly as well. And then what we're going to do is start kneading it. So I'll be back with you in a moment to explain how to do that. So I've turned my dough out onto my work surface, it's nice and sticky. What I'm going to start doing now is kneading it. So what you want to do, just spread it out a bit on your surface, get some of that flour on it. And then you're going to start folding it in on itself. And if it's a bit sticky, as you're folding it, it's going to start to get a little bit less sticky as it picks up more of that flour, which absorbs some of that moisture. And what you're going to do is you're going to be kneading it, so you're folding it in on itself, and pushing it down, and turning it over. If it gets stuck, just scrape it off, put a bit more flour down, maybe put some flour on your hands, which will stop it getting stuck to your hands, and then just keep turning it, keep kneading it. So you're going to have to do this for about 10 minutes. So that's going to work that flour, work that yeast into it, work that salt into it, start getting that flavour building up, and start to make it into that silky smooth surface that you're going to want before you start baking your bread. So I'm going to time about 10 minutes of that. It's a bit like you're beating the dough up, you're folding it over, making sure that it's not getting stuck to the surface, putting more flour on it if you need to, and I'll get back to you in 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long time, isn't it? So once you have kneaded it for 10 minutes, you're going to end up with a really silky, satin smooth dough that looks a little bit like this. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to get your ball of dough, make it into a nice ball, and you're going to put it into a lightly oiled bowl. So just put a little drizzle of oil in there. Put your dough in, and then you're going to cover it with cling film. So what you want to do is leave that for about an hour in a normal room temperature room. You don't want to put it in the sun, because if you put it in the sun, then yes, it will get big really quickly, but you'll get all those carbon dioxide bubbles that we talked about. You get a nice big dough, but it's going to be full of air bubbles. So you want to keep it somewhere warm, but not too warm. You don't want to have any breeze. You don't want it too cold, because if you make it too cold, then your yeast isn't going to work and your bread's not going to rise. So you're going to aim to leave it for about an hour, or until it's got twice as big in size. So an hour gives you a perfect amount of time to clean up your work surface, do your washing up, and maybe, if you're doing what I'm doing, I'm going to go for my daily exercise, come back and finish the bread off. See you in a bit. So after an hour, it will have doubled in size. If you need to leave it a bit longer, then just leave it for a bit longer. So all you need to do now is get out of your bowl, push the air out of it, make it into a sphere again, or a circular shape, and then you're going to put it on some parchment paper or some grease-proof paper, and then you're going to cover it again. So finally we're on to the last step. So what you need to do is heat your oven up to 220 degrees, or if it's a convection oven, 200 degrees. And then you've got your loaf, you've been proving it for an hour, so it's risen, it's nice and big. You can take the cling film off. Then, with a sharp knife, get your adult to do this. I'm just going to put a little cross in the top. Sure it cuts through the surface, so you will need a sharp knife. And that'll be about 6 centimetres long. And then I'm going to, you don't have to do this at all, I'm going to put some salt and pepper on it, and I'm just going to put a sprinkle of flour on it to give it a bit more flavour on the top. And once you've done that, you're going to put it in the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes until it's golden brown. It might need a little bit longer. And then when you get it out of the oven, which I'll go over again, you're going to get it out using some oven gloves. So you take the tray out, you're going to turn it and you're going to knock on the bottom, and it's going to sound hollow if it's ready. If it doesn't, then you're going to pop it back in the oven for another minute or two. So once that's all done, pop it in the oven, 25 to 30 minutes, pop it out, see if it's done. And I'll show you the finished product shortly. Okay, my loaf's been in the oven for half an hour, so I'm going to get it out and check if it's ready. So all you need to do is turn it on its side. You're going to give it a knock on the bottom to see if it sounds hollow. It does. So now you have a ready loaf. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. And this here is our finished product. So I'm going to put all the ingredients and a link to the recipe are underneath this video. If you give it a try, let me know how you get on. Thank you for watching. Just another quick note to say, when you get out of the oven, if you just take it out off of the tray and leave it on a cooling rack, otherwise underneath your bread it's going to get really soggy and it will ruin your loaf.